Does BMI matter to lifters? Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. Um, Look, this is going to be a bit of a nuanced topic, and what people need to understand, a lot of it still depends on how much body fat you have, and it's going to depend on how many performance-enhancing drugs you use, because these are both still factors in this equation. It's been noted, a lot of medical doctors are aware of this. A lot of medical doctors are up to speed on this. It's even in their notes in a few different countries. I've known of it, both the US and the UK. Their notes say, there's wiggle room permissible for really serious lifters, really serious athletes, American football players, rugby players, people who carry a ton of muscle, right? Who lift weights, very athletic, all these things. There's going to be a slightly different set of rules, meaning it's not going to be seen as the same risk factor, up to a certain point, But what we need to keep in mind here, a lot of times guys who haven't been training that long, they're not on gear or anything, they're at a higher body fat, and they make this assumption that BMI doesn't matter, when you're still kind of fat. Yeah, it's going to matter a lot still. Okay, it's going to matter. And it's not saying that muscle is automatically as bad. People say, well, it's just as bad for your heart. No, that's actually not true. It's absolutely not true. In fact, your muscle tissue, in terms of the blood flow and the stress on your heart, the capillaries and everything through all of it, and your muscles help pump some of that blood through the capillaries. It does reduce some of the stress on the heart. So pound for pound, no muscle is not, absolutely nowhere near as taxing as body fat is, okay? In fact, we could argue, and the data is overwhelming, that a lot of health markers, any muscle you gain is automatically a benefit. And it's unlimited, okay? But we do need to be concerned with excessive muscle, through any source could still be a problem for things like left ventricular hypertrophy. So certain health risks related to the heart, large amounts of muscle can still exacerbate it just as much as body fat can. Okay, so we need to be aware of that, but it's not all of them. In fact, most risk factors, extra muscle will reduce it, but it doesn't mean you can get away with a lot more body fat. And I think this is what people have to understand with that. And then I'm going to go into the PED side of the equation, because that's a big factor here, and we can't ignore that factor. So the thing to think about, most risk factors go down with muscle, any muscle, even muscle that you gain from performance enhancing drugs and training, right? So we need to be clear which ones. Anything involving insulin response, blood glucose, insulin sensitivity, right? Glucose disposal. Going to be most cancers, definitely diabetes. All muscle is protective. Like, the more muscle you have, the better. And I'm talking all the way up to serious bodybuilder status. Having that much muscle is protective against these things. It will reduce your cancer risk. Unless you take drugs that specifically increase it. Same thing with the diabetes. Every pound of muscle that you gain on your body, from the first up to the 50th, 60th, 80th pound of muscle, absolutely will improve insulin sensitivity. Okay? Absolutely will. Unless you take drugs that interfere with it. Okay? So this is where we need to be clear with some of this. We have to be absolutely clear with this. And then we'll get over to the cardiovascular risk factors. So yeah, muscle tissue competes with tumors. Absolutely competes with tumors for resources. It is protective against cancer. Unless you happen to inject large amounts of insulin and IGF-1. Well, if that's what you're doing to gain extra muscle, well, you're going to offset those a little bit. We might be back into the other category. But if you take a large amount of oral anabolics that put stress on the liver, well, you might get liver tumors from it, in the extreme case. If you're taking a lot of them, or, here's the one, you're taking a small amount of them, but you drink alcohol. Ooh, the data on that's pretty scary. Any alcohol combined with oral anabolics is really bad in the research. It's way worse than either one by itself. Way, way, way worse. It's just there's a synergistic negative effect on the liver. Okay, that's a problem. So risk of liver tumor starts going up. So you have to think about that. Does this mean that the muscle you gained doesn't still help? The muscle still helps with all these things. It's just you have these other factors. Now keeping in mind, notice we didn't mention injectable anabolics at all in there, because no, they don't increase any of the risk, because there's no reason to think they do. But these other PEDs do, and you're not going to get pro bodybuilder size without these other PEDs. That's what people have to remember. Think Arnold Schwarzenegger when you think gear big. Modern bodybuilders, all that other stuff's in the equation. All right. So what about the other cardiovascular risk factors? A lot of them, because again, the impact on all this other stuff, the muscle gains are cardioprotective. Other than stuff like left ventricular hypertrophy, that one area of the heart, that could be a problem. It could do that. So if you're getting really big from taking a bunch of stuff, that could add up there. All right, what about the lipid profile? Do a lot of anabolics potentially, depending, especially when you stack them with certain things that control side effects. Some of those side effect reducing substances, yeah, they affect lipid profile. So does this contribute to possible atherosclerosis? Yes, and you have to factor that in. So you can't remove that from the equation. So when people say, well, guys, you're that big from all that gear, it can't be good. No, the muscle is probably not a real problem other than that one thing with the heart, that one thing. But all the other cardio risk factors, it reduces them. Cancer, diabetes, it does. But the side effects of the copious amount of drugs you might be using may be a problem still. You still die from that. Keeping in mind, there's never been an actual link found between moderate anabolic use and mortality, by the way. Just noting that. It's never, researchers agree on that. But we don't know what that threshold is. Just an FYI. We have no idea where the threshold is. But I think it's safe to say that when you're anywhere near pro bodybuilder big, you've definitely passed that threshold. You've definitely passed it by that point. Definitely some point smaller than that. We just don't know where it is. But in terms of the BMI itself, if it's from muscle, not really. The BMI itself is not a concern. It's probably cardioprotective. But if you have a 30 or a 33 BMI and you're 23% body fat, you don't have anything resembling abs, you got a little bit of a belly, at that point the BMI is still definitely should be a concern because you're still tubby. The muscle will help protect against some of it, but are you overweight? And that's the point. If you're sitting at a 30 BMI, you don't use any steroids, and you've only been lifting weights for 4 years, like with any degree of seriousness, or you don't train your legs really, really hard, the biggest muscles, it's probably a problem. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.